I've been getting many questions lately from programmers, especially beginners, about ways to stop forgetting what they've learned. How can I keep all this information in my brain? I'm sure you have asked yourself the question at least once. Don't worry, you are not alone. I remember how frustrating it was for me as a computer science student in college to keep forgetting what I had learned. We've all been there, and I'm here to help. If you are new to this channel, let me introduce myself. My name is Akram and I'm a web developer based in Germany with more than 10 years of experience. Today, I will share with you 11 tricks you can use to remember everything you learn. These can come in handy not only on your programming journey, but also in your day-to-day life, whether you are trying to pick up a new language, do better in school, or just get better at memorizing things. So, if you are ready, let's dive in and see how we can make the information stick. Let's start with tip number 1, association. This means that you should connect your new concepts to things that you already understand. It will help you remember new information more easily and make learning more efficient. Think of it this way. Imagine you're trying to learn a new programming language and you come across a new concept. Instead of memorizing it on its own, try to link it to something you already know. You could relate it to a similar concept in a different language, or it could remind you of a problem you solved differently in the past. Let's say you're learning about arrays in programming, for example. You know how an array is a collection of values stored in a specific order. You could associate it with how items on your shelf are arranged. So each book on your shelf could represent a value. By making these connections, you're creating a new network of related ideas in your mind, and this network will be easier to recall than a random isolated concept. Tip number 2, use spaced repetition. German scientist Ebbinghaus explored forgetting in an experiment in 1885. He had built a graph called the forgetting curve, which shows how information is lost over time when there is no attempt to retain it. The best way to memorize is by systematic and constant repetition. I used this technique in college and it works like magic. Imagine you're learning a new code. After you gain through it once, you immediately review it again. Then you repeat this process several times, increasing the interval between the reviews each time. So for example, you might review it the first time after 3 days, then a week, then 20 days after that, and then 30 days, etc. For each review, you're building a strong foundation for that information in your memory. Your brain begins to recognize how important it is and stores it in your long-term memory. Flashcards are a good example and can be a useful tool to do this. Tip number 3, use mnemonics. Mnemonics are a popular memory trick that helps you retain information by connecting it to something familiar and easy to remember. Advertisers love using mnemonics, especially melodies and slogans, because they are easy to remember and can become lodged in your head, whether you like it or not. I'll give you an example to help you better understand. In CSS, a dot is used to select a class, while a dash is for an ID. If you tend to confuse them, just remember this sentence. Drugs are not cool, which translates to hash is not class. There you have it. Tip number 4, use visual aids. Visualization is a fantastic technique that can boost you significantly when learning to code. Sometimes it can be helpful to physically draw out the concepts you are learning. You can draw diagrams, for example. They are helpful tools to visualize the structure of code. You can draw boxes and arrows to show how functions interact, or use flowcharts to see how data moved through a program. This will help you see the big picture and understand how everything fits together. Mind maps are also a great way to organize and visualize the different concepts you're learning. Write the main idea in the center of a page and the branches out from there with subtopics, keywords, and examples. This will help you to see the relationship between different parts of the code and make it easier to understand and remember. My personal favorites when I was a student were post-it notes. I liked writing keywords or code snippets on each note and sticking them on the wall to see the code in one place. Tip number 5, make up stories. Creating a story around a code snippet can help you remember the code's syntax, structure, and purpose. Let's say you're learning about a code snippet that helps you calculate the average of a set of numbers. To remember that better, imagine you're a teacher grading a set of tests for your students. To find the average score, you add up all the scores and divide them by the number of the students. This is exactly what the code does. It takes an array of numbers, adds them up, and divides by the number of elements in the array to find the average. When you memorize it this way, the story can serve as a trigger to bring the code back to mind when you try to recall it later. Tip number 6. Understand what you learn. This may seem obvious, but we often forget to understand what we are learning, especially when trying to take it a maximum amount of information in the minimum amount of time. Being a good programmer is about more than memorizing every little detail or every programming language out there. It is about understanding the ideas and concepts behind programming and knowing when to use them to solve problems. It is like having a toolbox full of tools and knowing which one to use for a specific job. A great programmer understands how programming works and can think creatively and critically to find a best solution. As an experienced programmer, I can assure you we don't only memorize things, we understand them, so we use that understanding to make things happen. Tip number 7. Always take notes. For many reasons, taking notes is a great habit to get into when learning to code. The first thing is that writing things down already helps a lot with remembering. The second reason is that it helps you organize your thoughts and have something to refer back to it later if you need to double check anything. It also keeps you from spacing out while learning. So let's say you're watching a tutorial on a new programming language. Taking notes helps you stay focused throughout the entire process and prevents you from being distracted. Tip number 8. Take breaks. This is essential if you're trying to learn two similar programming concepts and don't pause in between. Your brain mixes them up and creates a huge mess that makes it much harder for you to distinctly understand and remember each one. To avoid this, I recommend you take long breaks and make sure to give your brain a rest when studying programming topics and that are closely connected. Learning opposites together and on the other hand is very efficient. It makes both concepts easier to remember since our brain are better at memorizing differences than similarity. Tip number 9. Teach someone else. This is an efficient way to improve your memory when you teach someone else. You are forced to explain the concepts in your own words, which can help you understand them better. Plus, explaining the material to someone else can help you identify areas where you may still have gaps in your knowledge, and then you can work to fill them. This will eventually make the information stick better in your memory since actively recall and use it rather than just passively reading or listening to it. Tip number 10. Practice and make mistakes. So sometimes it may seem that you have fully understood and memorized something while reading a book or watching a tutorial. But it's a completely different story when you apply it to a project. You could realize that you didn't master the information as well as you thought and end up making mistakes. I know how frustrating and annoying that can be, but in reality, it helps you learn the information better than when no mistakes were made. It is scientifically proven that our brains are very sensitive to mistakes and tend to hold on to information better after getting it wrong the first time. To get your hands dirty and don't be afraid to make mistakes. It will only help you become a better programmer. Tip number 11. Get enough sleep. When you're learning to program, getting caught up in the excitement and wanting to power through everything as quickly as possible can be easy. However, without enough sleep, it becomes harder for your brain to process and understand what you've learned, making it more difficult to remember later. Studies have shown that getting enough sleep helps you store memories better and make them easily accessible when needed. So, if you want to remember better, sleep better. So memorizing what you have learned doesn't happen overnight. It is a continuous process that needs practice consistently and dedication. And by giving you these tips, I am not implying that you have to remember every single piece of information that you learn. I don't even think that is humanly possible. But they will make your journey easier and your learning process quicker. Make sure to apply these tips and find the ones that work best for you. Good luck and happy coding. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the answers you were looking for. If you have any questions, please leave them below. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next time.